introduce our panelists here this evening. We have Dr. Byers, Superintendent of School. We have Anna Mann, Principal of Amity Regional High School. Kathy Burke, Principal at AMSO. Dr. Tracy, Principal at AMSB. We have Tom Brandt, Director of Pupil Services. Jill LaPlante, Director of Counseling Services. Sean DeRosa, our Technology Director. Jim Sisa, our Facilities Director. We have two teachers with us this evening, Miss Andrea Drury from AMSB and Miss Reen Wallen from the high school here, and one student, Audrey Marin. My name is Monica Cruiser, and I will be your host this evening for our first webinar ever, and would like to first start off by turning it over to Dr. Byers, who will talk a little bit. We have many questions that have come in, and we have many questions that can come in through the chat as well, through the Q&A. So we'll try to be handling those at the same time. And we've had some frequently asked questions. And one of them is, can you just give us an overview of the model and what the difference is between synchronous and asynchronous and no direct instruction?
So to set up the plan that every district had to submit to the state, we had to develop a plan for both full in-person learning. So as if all of our students were returning, you could sort of say like it was last year, except with safety protocols in place and the things that we have to do to try to keep students safe. We had to develop a plan as if none of our students were returning and we were fully in a remote learning environment, not unlike what happened in the springtime last year when schools had to close. And then we had to develop something that was sort of an in-between, which most districts refer to as a hybrid model. And so that was a good portion of the work that was done this summer by the reopening committee, was envisioning what each of those three models would possibly look like. And in order to open up our schools, we consult with our local health districts. Amity actually falls under two different health districts, the Orange Department of Public Health and then the Quinnipiac Valley Health District. So we're working with both of those. And it was their advisement that if we could start in the hybrid, it would give us an opportunity to look at all the plans that we put in place and see what it would look like as if we opened in full, but honestly with only about half of our students here. And so that is the plan that we have to begin the year, is going to be starting in hybrid. And we've talked a little bit about what that schedule would look like in some of the videos and the presentations that we've sent out. But what we realized was that the first week of school had to look a little bit different than all of the weeks that are going to come after that. And part of that is because a good portion of our hybrid model depends on two things. The first is the students being safe in the school building, and we have to kind of retrain all of our students on which hallways they can walk down, in what direction, how they enter a classroom, what our expectations are for them when it becomes dismissal time, how we want them to behave when they have to use the restroom. So we actually have to spend a lot of time teaching kids just how to sort of do school that we've never had to do before. And then we also have to make sure that everybody understands how to learn remotely, because that's the other big piece of the hybrid, is that some of the students are going to be working and learning remotely from home. So on the first 2 days of school, literally August 31st and September 1, we are focusing on the kids who are physically in the building at that time and teaching them those ins and outs of navigating the building and their classrooms. We'll also give them some of the information that they need to be able to participate remotely. And so we will practice the remote instruction for the first time on Wednesday. So what that means is for any student who's learning remotely on Monday and Tuesday, because that's all about physically being present in the building, there is no direct instruction on that day. We'll have our Wednesday remote day, and then we'll start to fall into our asynchronous learning on Thursday. And the difference is that in synchronous learning, we would expect the students to log in or participate in their classroom instruction at the exact same time as the students who are in school. And they would participate with the exact same students in their class, and it would all be happening in real time. Asynchronous means that the learning is happening outside of that scheduled school and class time.
All right, thank you. I just want to go back and introduce Dr. Germain. I missed him. Dr. Germain is also on this call, and then we'll have a question for him in a moment. This next question goes to Mrs. Mann. Many questions have been put in about what happens after 12:09, 12:12 dismissal. Can you speak to what is supposed to be doing? What time are they expected to log into their device? And is this time for doing homework? Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So thanks so much, Ms. Cruiser. I do want to kind of reiterate one of the things that Dr. Byers alluded to, which is that something we definitely learned last year when we did our quick kind of triage flip was that we needed a little bit more structure for when we entered this year. Not only because we think that the structure will provide a better learning environment for our students and a better teaching experience for our teachers, but also because that structure allows us to be able to kind of in a fluid state, which is where we are right now, be able to kind of switch from hybrid to full to offsite or whatever we might need to. So the expectation is just like if we were all fully on site for the entire week, that students are engaged with their learning from the beginning of school, the school day at 7:34 to the end of the school day at 2:18 or 2:15 or so. However, we understand that in a hybrid model, we will be dismissing at 12:12 on our early dismissal during the days that students are on site. And that's going to take them some time to get home and have something to eat and kind of get reacclimated. And so the expectation for the afternoon, roughly around 1:15 till about 2:30, is that they are engaged with independent learning, but that's also their time for work in small groups. Their teachers might say, this afternoon when you get home, I want you to work collaboratively using your devices to accomplish a particular project or have a discussion group. And the teachers are going to be doing, they have time to have office hours time and also do some more preparation. So they'll be able to give meaningful feedback during that time and engage with their students. And also, on our offsite day, which is kind of our model for what a remote remote learning experience would look like on Wednesdays, we have everybody starting school on a late arrival schedule. But the expectation is that if students have questions for the day, or if they are trying to prepare for a class that's upcoming on a Wednesday, they have that 2 hours in the morning to try to prepare and begin to be prepared for that day. And so we fully expect and invite students to engage with their learning throughout the entire school day, understanding that there's travel that is in place in the middle of the day, as well as getting something to eat. But yes, we are anticipating that that's when kind of collaborative work gets done and projects and the like, and they also have access to their teachers. And so with the synchronous experience, that should add a little bit more structure so that time that is more independent learning is still a little bit more meaningful.
Okay, the question that came in on the Q&A, it kind of goes along with this, and maybe this could go to Ms. Burke. How can we ensure that the teachers are actually teaching during this time? Like, because of the spring when we started off, not all teachers were doing the synchronous teaching. You're muted.
So one of the reasons that we really changed our model and went for a more synchronous model was to provide teachers, to set the expectation that teachers would have more face time and more interaction with students as a class. So, we've set a schedule, and we've also provided additional software, which I'm sure Mr. DeRosa could speak to, that will allow teachers direct connection with students at home while working with students in the classroom. So, and in addition to that, we've also done an extensive amount of planned PD to help teachers learn how to facilitate conversations both within the classroom and with small groups of students learning from home. So again, that was feedback that we got and played an important role in how we changed our plan to become more synchronous.
Thank you, Ms. Burke. This next one goes to Mr. DeRosa. It's about these school issue devices. Can you please speak to, do we have to use them for our work when we're at home? And you speak a little bit about Aristotle and how that will be used in classes.
Sure. So the short answer is yes. You do need to use them. I think if we need to tweak the perception a little bit of what these devices really are, right? So if I was going to go out and buy my son or daughter a laptop, this is not the laptop I would buy them. This laptop is designed and given to the students from the school district as a teaching tool, as a way for our teachers to deliver curriculum and interact with our students and to give them the best possible distance and hybrid and in-person learning experience they possibly can. They are not meant for streaming Netflix, and they may slow down a little bit for streaming Facebook and all that good stuff. That's not to say that they won't do it, but that's not their primary function, and that's not really how we're focusing on it. But for whether or not you have to use them, yeah, in the same way that I could find pretty much everything that's in my history book on Google, but I still have to take home my history book. It's that same sort of idea. So we got to shift that perception of they're not laptops, they are learning tools. And if you look at them that way, then it starts to make a little bit more sense. If we work backwards and into why these devices have that tool on them, which is Aristotle. Aristotle is a borderless classroom. It's a tool that our teachers are going to use to reach out and engage our students when they're at home. And a lot of times when they're in school. You can think of it sort of as an educational version of Zoom, but a little bit more beefed up with features that will allow the teacher to share their whiteboard, share their classroom, allow students from home to ask questions while a class is happening synchronously in the building. It is a way for our teachers to connect with our students and provide the best possible experience for our students. It is not a way for us to spy on our students. It's not a way for us to monitor our students. There is no nefarious draconian plan here for us to take over your students' devices. It is literally a way for us to connect in the educational environment during educational hours and deliver that curriculum to those students.
There's questions coming in about seniors, and some people are asking, can that be downloaded on their personal devices? Yes.
So Aristotle is an entire suite, the way that we purchased it. Because they are so the devices that we're giving out that are part of one-to-one that are owned by the district, we need to make sure that any student that uses them anywhere is protected. And so it includes that borderless classroom piece, and it also includes some filtering and some monitoring pieces. And by monitoring, I don't mean we have the time or do we really want to monitor everything that goes on a student's device. But we do want to make sure that they're safe when they're using a device given to them by us. There is a version of Aristotle that will be made available to the seniors if they want to put them on their own devices. That is a very thin client version of the classroom that is only the classroom part of the software. So there's no monitoring, there's no filtering, there's none of that stuff on what would go on the seniors' devices. It would simply be the portion of Aristotle that would allow them to join and engage in a class during school hours and only during school hours. And again, it's not spyware, it's not sitting in the background. It's very obvious when it's turned on and when you're in class, and you can at any given time turn it off and leave class if you so choose. That is your device, and you have 100% control of that device, but we are offering that software so that you can use your device to log into a classroom. And again, and even to go back to, do they need to use that device to do all of their work? No. If your student needs to write a paper in Word, and they find it easier to do on their desktop than on the issued device, and it has nothing to do with Aristotle, and it's happening after school hours, by all means, use whatever device you like and whatever you're comfortable with. But when it comes to engaging with school during school hours, that's when the device becomes mandatory, and it just needs to be there.
All right, thank you. This is a question for Ms. Wallen, and people are asking, the questions keep coming in about when students will students be able to log in on a remote day with the rest of the class in school and view the entire lesson that's taught? Can you speak to that, how the synchronous learning will happen?
Sure. So I can speak about how it would be in my class as a teacher. And I think it's going to be a little bit dependent based on your classroom style, but I plan on having the opportunity for students to be in class at the same time they can log on. And so that we can have that synchronous piece. It may not always be through video or an interface like that. It may be through online work that we're accessing, Google Documents and things that we're working on together, or lab activities that we're working on together or collaborating with. So I would say that on those days, there's definitely going to be opportunities to make sure that we have those student interactions.
All right, Thank you. And Ms. Drury, this one kind of goes to you. It's more directed towards the middle schools. When students are working from home on remote learning and following their schedule, how are they going to log into each class, even though the teachers will be moving from class to class?
Yes, at the middle school level, all students, all teachers will have their own Google Classroom. And so as teachers move into that cohort, one of the things that they'll have them do is to log into the Google Classroom for their particular class. That'll contain everything that has to do with the subject that they're about to learn. We'll also have the Aristotle platform, which right now we're still learning, but that will allow them to have the face-to-face synchronous interactions with the students who are at home.
All right, thank you. The next one that's coming in a lot is, I'm going to go to Dr. Tracy. It's about, many people are asking, how do I get from one school to another for drop off? And can you talk a little bit about that for getting kids, if you're driving your students to school or picking them up as well?
I can. One of the things that we came to quickly realize through parent feedback after the plan was released, that we had to really kind of figure out a way to stagger our dismissal time for students, parents, and so in order that parents can pick up students both here at the middle school and at the high school. So the way that we kind of work this out is that at the high school, we're going to have the buses are going to dismiss first, along with any student drivers that might be on campus, in order to clear the campus and provide for later on parents to come onto campus and pick up students. In reverse, at the middle school, parents will be able to pick up their students first before buses are dismissed, allowing parents to leave this campus and start down to the high school before the traffic starts coming from our campus and away to the high school. So, and then buses will be released following the students who are being picked up or walking home from the middle schools. Here at the middle school, they'll be released by room. So we have a little bit of a staggered release time. It would allow for a little bit of a smoother flow in the hallways and allow for a little less traffic, more social distancing in the hallway. So that's kind of the plan at this point for dismissal.
All right, thank you. Another question that keeps coming in the spring, there were many different systems, Google, Unified. Is there going to be, and this one is kind of lobbed out there for anybody who's willing to speak, is there going to be one unifying platform for students?
Well, I'm happy to take that one. So, we, at the end of last spring, we had sent out a survey to all of our staff and our students and our parents and got feedback on kind of how the spring remote learning worked. And probably one of the most common comments that we had was that it was difficult to navigate when some people were using Google Classroom as their learning platform and when some teachers were using Unified Classroom. And so we took a long, hard look at both of those platforms as well as a third option. And as a district, one of the first decisions we made was to transition everybody to Google Classroom so that there will be one platform that everybody can look for to look for their classes and their homework assignments and their interactions with classmates and with teachers. We will readily acknowledge that some of the benefits that we saw with Unified Classroom, we don't find with Google Classroom, but Google Classroom has an ease and an intuitive use that we think provides better access for everybody in grades 7 through 12. And it certainly has a very clean look that I think makes it much easier to navigate. So we are comfortable with that as a choice to start our year, and certainly we'll stick with it through the course of this school year as just a way to be more unifying in terms of how we're presenting information to our students.
Okay. This is an opt-out question, and this can go to any of the three principals, I think. I'm choosing to opt out for my students. Can you give me more information on what are the expectations? And then a follow-up to that is my opt-out is still pending in PowerSchool. Can you tell me what I got to do next?
I can answer the opt-out pending question.
Okay, thank you, Ms. LaPlante.
There is a form for parents to fill out if they want to opt their child out of in-person learning. That can be found under forms in their parent PowerSchool account. It says pending right now, but that information is being given and has been given already to the school counselors who will be notifying teachers of the students who will be participating in remote learning. Anytime that form is filled out, an alert is sent to the counselor who will communicate that information to the teachers. To opt back into in-person learning, we are saying we may take up to 10 days for students who are remote and choose to come back into the school district. And again, that will be done through the school counselor at each of the 3 schools.
All right, thank you. This one is for Dr. Germain. How will a positive test or COVID test in the school be handled?
Thank you. I hope this isn't shocking news, but our first positive COVID diagnosis is not a matter of if it's going to happen, but when it's going to happen. So the infection prevention experts regionally feel that in a high school the size of Amity High School, we probably will have our first positive COVID diagnosis within the first week or 2 of school starting. So there is a robust plan of dealing with such a case. So initially, the school nurse, the superintendent, and the appropriate health department will be contacted, and immediately is the key to that. And that report may come in from a physician's office, from a parent report. It could be a student who's acutely ill in one of our schools. So that information will feed in. And then every COVID positive student is unique and in itself is a research project. So that student needs to be evaluated. What was their risk? Could this be a false positive? Do they have a sibling that's are they in the high school with a sibling in the middle school and another sibling in the elementary school? Have they been sufficiently cohorted? So a lot of minds will be thinking about each individual case and trying to find a plan that is safe for the students and the school and the staff to deal with that. And that, by the way, whether this is a student or a staff member, the process is going to be continued in the same way. Direct contacts will be notified in a confidential manner, and then the contact tracing will begin. So in its worst case scenario, the school can be closed for 3 to 5 days so that the contact tracing and a deep cleaning can be done. But again, it is based on a number of variables that need to be thought through with each positive. And then recommendations, testing, quarantining will be subsequently communicated out to the families and staff and students who were affected.
All right, thank you. Going along with that, Mr. Sisa, questions came in about the school has normally had green products. How is any of those procedures changing? And if there's a situation like Dr. Germain just mentioned, how will we go about taking care of the school on a daily basis? If you can talk to the facilities part.
Sure. Our cleaning protocols will remain the same as far as using the state mandated green cleaning protocols and the chemicals we used to use. And we are still be using the ones. Cleaning is performed in the same manner. Disinfecting, however, is going to be a lot more widespread, where at the end of each day, desks that were used by students will be disinfected as well as cleaned. High touch areas such as the doorknobs or pencil sharpeners or any of those kind of things will be disinfected. Restrooms will be cleaned twice a day, once at the conclusion of the day and once in the middle of the day. And putting together a schedule of working with the principals of when it's ideal to close each one on which side of the building for cleaning and disinfection during the day. Cafeteria tables will be disinfected in between lunch waves and after the final lunch wave. So while cleaning will remain the same, the disinfecting portion of it is really going to ramp up. We have in each classroom provided 2 different types of wipes. We've consulted with the 2 health departments that serve our district. One is an antibacterial wipe and the other is a disinfecting alcohol-based wipe that kills 99.9% of germs. Both are safe for skin. We had to really choose products carefully since these are available for student use. Nobody's being asked to use them or made to use them, but we certainly want them available if students feel good about taking a wipe and cleaning the desk before they sit down at it. we're just going to have heightened awareness of any type of that. Going along with what Dr. Germain said, if it's time for deep cleaning, if we do get a case, we've got the appropriate protocols in place for the CDC guidelines of how to clean a room that may have had an infected person in it, and we will follow those. And our staff has been trained, and we have punch cards that each one will follow to make sure that we do it right every time.
All right, thank you. Next question is from Mr. Brandt. There's questions coming in about students with IEPs or special education services. Can you speak to what it will look like in this hybrid model and how services will be met?
Sure thing. So during the hybrid model, the case managers will be touching base with parents to explain in detail how the services for individual students will look. Additionally, through recommendations and guidance from the state, all special education students will have a document called the Learning Model IEP Implementation Plan developed for students, and that is a tool that will be shared with parents to further document in detail how services may look different in our hybrid model than what's written on their IEP. An important part to remember is this is different than the spring in terms of IEP implementation, where we were not obligated to implement IEPs. Currently, we are obligated to implement IEPs right now, and any differences parents are going to see in IEP implementation is going to come from the fact that we are working on a shortened school day. So thus we write IEPs for class periods that are 57 minutes long or 45 minutes long, and the class periods we have now are shorter. So we will document those changes on this plan, share those with parents, and then have ongoing dialogue with parents regarding what that looks like for their individual students. Additionally, all federal laws remain in effect regarding IEP implementation, so we need to provide the accommodations, the modifications, and services that are identified in a student's IEP.
Okay, thank you. Questions keep coming in about what if my device is broken, Mr. DeRosa? How will they get assistance?
So if they're having problems with their devices, now currently in the hybrid environment, you can stop into our help desk, which we have a brand new, hopefully it'll be a student-led help desk at the high school. We also have the 2 help desks at the library media centers in both middle schools. So on one of the days that the student is in, they can always stop in person and we can troubleshoot it in person for them. If it needs to be taken care of right here and now, and you're not going to be in, or you're learning remotely, and that's it, you can email helpdesk, all one word, at ammonregion5.org, and we'll put in a ticket for you and try to help you right there and then on the phone. I know there are some people that have been reaching out to us a lot in the last 3 to 4 days. I know it's an excuse you don't want to hear, and I apologize ahead of time, but it's been a little bit crushing. Right now we're doing student devices handouts for the 10th and 11th graders as we speak, and we're going to continue that through the week. We're going to catch up with those tickets as quickly as possible. Our goal is to have them all addressed prior to the start of school. But yeah, if you're finding that your device is slow or if it's lagging, give us a call. We can try to troubleshoot it. If you're in the building, we can always do a reimage. We can wipe it clean for you and we can start fresh. But all that stuff kind of, especially your wipe, needs to be done in school so you can log back in, set your profile back up, and send back out this. And even if you're remote and you want to stop in school, call us. We'll make a schedule or an appointment with you, and we'll meet you at the front doors. We'll bring you in, we'll do the work, and then hopefully get you on your way within a couple minutes. But we'll try not to forget about you.
All right. The next one is back to Dr. Germain. People are asking in the questions here, how many positive cases would it take to shut down school?
So that's a defined public health measure that is set by state standard. So I'm sure you're aware that the city of Danbury is having a significant outbreak, and they are just tickling the mark of the percent positives that would cause a school shutdown. I don't know the exact number that defines that for the state, but that is dictated to us, and that is a number that comes from the Department of Public Health.
All right, thank you. If someone could speak to about lunches, people are asking, is lunch being provided and how is lunch happening? Mrs. Mann, can you speak to that?
Certainly. Sorry, I had to turn on my microphone. So that's one of the things, as mentioned earlier by Dr. Byers, that's one of the things that having the hybrid approach will help us kind of plan for. We have a vision of how we're going to do this at the high school, and each middle school also has a plan, which we've been working on throughout the summer. But obviously we will not be having the same number of students in the cafeteria all at the same time. And so we are going to be using alternative spaces in the high school. We'll be using the cafeteria with dividers at the table. So there'll be only 4 students per table, and that is with dividers. So they are actually not, interacting face to face. There'll be a divider right in front of them. And so that limits us to about half the capacity, a little bit more than half. And so we'll be using some alternative spaces in the high school that we've identified throughout the school with custodial staff to clean and disinfect in between each lunch wave. And that's only when we come back to either an extended day or, at some point, hopefully when we have students all in. And then we will also be kind of figuring out the most efficient way an effective way to see which students go to which location. So that's something we also need to kind of work on based on when we get a sense of how many students we would have in. And that also speaks back to Mrs. LaPlante's point about giving the school a heads up of up to 2 weeks if students who are in remote choose to come back full. That gives us some time to kind of work those students in and figure out what each lunch wave would look like and the impact on lunch as well as on classrooms. And I know the middle schools have a similar plan. I don't know if either one, Jason or Kathy, would like to speak to.
Well, and if I can just jump in just for clarity's sake, to start the year while we're in a hybrid model and while students are being dismissed around noontime, we will not have active lunches in the cafeteria. What we will be, though, providing is a grab and go lunch that students would be able to take with them. They can't eat on the bus, but they would be able to bring that food home and have that lunch at home. We will also be offering the opportunity for curbside lunch pickup at the high school, and that would be for all 3 schools in the district. We'll have one distribution point for the curbside pickup. And that would be on days when students are either learning remotely or it would be available on the remote Wednesday. So all of the really good plans that Mrs. Mann talked about are in anticipation as if we are back for a full day of learning and that we would actually have lunch periods. But to start the year, because of our early dismissal, we will be providing the grab and go or the curbside pickup lunch.
As a point of clarification, those are for purchase.
And yes, those are for purchase. And yeah, and it's not going to look like the spring where it was just free for everybody.
All right, the next question is for our student, Audrey. Audrey, can you speak to how students are going to handle synchronous and asynchronous learning?
Yeah, so I think at the end of the last school year, a lot of students were looking for a more synchronous learning environment, more face-to-face interaction with teachers. And then with the new hybrid model, questions became, what really does synchronous look like and what does asynchronous look like? And I think that first week of school before content-based instruction on September 8th, students will be able to see, what in-person looks like in the hybrid model, what synchronous remote looks like in the hybrid model, and what asynchronous remote looks like. And I think the reality is that, synchronous learning may look different depending on which class you're talking about. An English class may teach different than a math class. So I think in the end, the model provides, maximum face-to-face interaction with teachers while prioritizing the safety of students and teachers.
Thank you. Dr. Tracy, I'm going to give this one to you. Many people may have missed the beginning of this, but can you talk about the synchronous and the schedules at the middle schools, and do they follow their class schedule? How do they know when to log on? What do they follow?
Sure. Students receive their schedules today, and simply period 1 is the first period of the day. It'll always be the first period of the day. We're not rotating our schedule as we had in the past. So students will log on to their first period class. They'll be there for about a half hour. I think they're 30-minute periods. And then they'll log out of that class, and teachers will tell them to log in to their next period class. And because the kids are cohorted in a group, it's the same group that's going to be there with the next teacher that comes into the classroom. during, whether it's synchronous or whether it's the synchronous kind of in-person versus synchronous remote.
All right, thank you. This next one goes to Ms. LaPlante. It's a counseling question. This is a different kind of senior year for some seniors. How will this senior planning, college planning go? And will there still be similar things to college night and financial aid night? And what supports will be in there for them?
We are still planning to have a senior parent night and a financial aid night, although it will be done virtually. So information will be forthcoming about that. And the counseling department is putting plans together right now to really address the seniors and how we can best support them through their post-secondary planning. We'll do a series of webinars, and we are creating also a Google Classroom that they will have access to be able to get resources for all of the information related to putting their plans together for what they want to do after high school.
And if I can just follow up on that, just kind of less from the planning spot and kind of more for the support of our seniors. The high school administration worked very closely with the then junior class council to kind of at the end of last school year in anticipation that this school year for them would look very different. And so we have been actually working throughout the summer and brainstormed a couple different plans to, so we definitely understand the major impact on our seniors as they move into their senior year in terms of their post-secondary planning, but also their actual right now experience. So we are looking to have alternative experiences, even though they won't be the traditional necessarily fall activities that they're used to. We're working with the senior class council to come up with some, kind of celebratory and exciting experiences for them.
All right, this next question is actually back to you, Mrs. Mann. What are the consequences, or how will it be handled for someone who is a student who's refusing to wear a mask?
All right, so yeah, that's a question that our faculty have had as well. And so I think that it was mentioned in presentations and in the plan that, we will certainly go about, that is a safety issue. And so we will handle it as such. Certainly the student will have a conversation immediately with an administrator, and we will work to address the behavior, in a kind of a restorative way and explain that this is a health and safety measure. It's not really an opinion. And so there is a requirement if you are in school to wear a mask. And so if there are some issues, we can try to work through that and get to the root of why the mask is not, why the student is not willing to wear the mask. But if it just fundamentally comes down to the student refusing to wear the mask or put the mask on, then that student will be asked to go immediately into remote learning. And I know that that's kind of a question about how does that work. Mrs. LaPlante mentioned earlier that it's going to take a couple weeks for us to get a student to come back out of remote learning if that's the request. But remote learning, in terms of going into remote learning, can happen essentially immediately. So, we have a basic requirement for the health and safety, which is one of the main pillars of our school. Always, but the health and safety of our entire community, that everyone will be required to wear masks. So. If that behavior cannot be complied, then we're going to have to ask the student to not be a part of our on-site school community.
This is a facilities question back to Mr. Sisa. Can you give us some information on the HVAC system and what type of measures have been taken into account for the situation?
Sure. The COVID pandemic notwithstanding, we've always had a very aggressive preventive maintenance plan with filter changes and our in-house licensed people servicing our equipment on regularly scheduled intervals. That includes, filters and making sure that the air dampers and their splines are in correct timing, lubrication of motors, and cleaning of the units themselves. And for instance, now that we'll be running our HVAC systems, typically the recommendation is, to run CO2 controls, which we have at 800 to 1,000 parts per million. We've lowered ours to 600 parts per million. So, we're really flushing the air when the spaces are occupied and the folks are in there. Other recommendations, we've always started our units an hour and a half ahead of occupation. The recommendation is now 2 hours. So we've reprogrammed our building management systems to accommodate that. The good news on the back end of that is that they recommend an hour after occupation, leave the units running. And we've always left ours running till 10 o'clock at night since custodians and other people were in the building. So, you know, the amount of air exchanges and things like that that'll be going on after student occupation and faculty occupation is very good. We had the health departments walk through our buildings. They're very familiar with our units. They were very complimentary of all of our efforts. For those that watched the video, you know, I read snippets from Quinnipiac Valley Health Department about the maintenance and the care and how we are the, I guess, the poster child for the rest of the district in how we maintain ours as compared to other schools. So I feel very good about the position we're in with the HVAC and the running and keeping the building climate good.
Thank you. This is back to maybe Dr. Byers about opting out and participation in other activities. And people are thinking they have to opt out of hybrid or opt into hybrid. Can you speak to that?
So whether the school district is in a hybrid model, a full in-person or a full remote model, that is a school district decision. So we are beginning the year in a hybrid model. And if you would like your children to participate in that model, which means they are in person 2 days a week and participating in synchronous remote learning 3 days a week, you don't have to do anything because that's how we are going to start the year. However, if you would like them to be voluntarily remote all the time, 5 days a week, there is a form in Power School for parents to complete. And then it goes back to the question that Mrs. LaPlante answered about how that gets processed. In terms of extracurricular activities, certainly it is our intention to continue to provide the students with as much of a full school experience as we can. So many of our clubs are going to be able to run virtually, and students would be able to participate in those in a virtual manner. And that can be if we are in a hybrid model, if we are fully remote, or if somebody is voluntarily opting for remote learning. There are a certain number of activities that do require in-person attendance, sports being the most notable one. And in that respect, we are going to request that the students who are participating in in-person activities are also participating in in-person learning. And so, and that decision was made after much discussion, and that is what the expectation is going to be.
Thank you. This is another one for any of the three principals. My student feels ill and is staying home. Can they attend through distance learning on those days if it's the day they might have been scheduled to come into school?
They should stay home on the days if they're feeling ill. Absolutely.
And
call the school nurse and let us know that they're not feeling well. And the absence will be recorded as such, but we absolutely encourage students who are not feeling well to stay home.
And the idea of logging in, if a student is too ill to come to school and they're really not up for that interaction, whether it be in person or at home, then we encourage them to take care. Their health and well-being comes first.
All right. This one is how immediate would the change in plans happen? And maybe this goes back to Dr. Byers, and I don't know if you spoke to it, but how could we go all distance, come back to remote, hybrid?
So I would anticipate that the change to go to a more restrictive learning setting, and by that I mean moving to, say, fully remote, would happen very quickly. So it would be guided by those metrics that Dr. Germain was referencing before, if we were seeing large community spread. And I think as soon as we saw that, if we were notified by the health department that we were in that sort of dangerous zone, the expectation is that we can literally turn it on a dime. And so if they tell us that we need to go fully remote, then we would put a message out and the next day we would be fully remote. I think our intent would be that as we find that metrics are changing and that we are afforded an opportunity to start bringing students back, that perhaps might be a more gradual buildup where we would want to give families and students and staff a little bit of a heads up notice. So we would try to do that in a way that was considerate of sort of planning, but also, you know, not so long that people are out of school for weeks and months on end. And again, much of that is going to be dictated by the health department and what they see in terms of those metrics. So I think that's probably the best answer, but nobody's experienced this yet, so we don't really have a sense of what that might look like until I think we actually start our school year up.
Thank you. I'm getting lots of questions about PE and mask breaks. Mrs. Mann, would you want to speak to how PE is being handled in the schools and how mask breaks are being handled?
Sure. So there will not be any changing for PE, and they're going to kind of really focus on fitness units and that kind of thing. And remember, our PE teachers are also going to be teaching in the hybrid, and so they'll be engaging remote learners as well as students on site. As far as mask breaks at the high school, particularly for the hybrid to start, we've designated certain class or time where students will be afforded mask breaks. So PE is one of those times. We are going to encourage our PE teachers, and our PE classes will be happening outside. So students will take their backpacks with them to their designated location for that day's class, and they will be instructed when they can take their mask breaks, being appropriately distanced outside, and having a chance to take that break. But we realize that only 9th, 10th, and 11th, half the 9th grade, 10th, and 11th grade students are in PE. And so we have also said that during study halls that take place in the cafeteria, at those points, we'll have a rotation for the way the proctors for the study halls allow students to go out on the patio and are monitored and socially distanced for mask breaks out there. And then also through during our double lab periods in science, the science teachers will be organizing when they are able to take breaks from their lab, and they'll figure out an appropriate time, and they will be following the directional hallway directions, because we have changed the way foot traffic flow happens in the high school and in the middle schools. They'll follow appropriate traffic flow in the high school in order to go out, take a break, and then come back in, and so that they won't be passing each other. And so between those various configurations, we're pretty confident that people will get mask breaks throughout the day.
All right, this next question goes to Ms. Drury. It's a curriculum question. Given that we're in less time in school, how is this curriculum still being covered or delivered to students?
Sure. What we have had the opportunity to talk about in the reopening plan, and that we'll be doing with our professional development this week, is to be looking at our content and the standards that we have to teach, and determining how we can roll those out to students in the best way possible. It's important for us to hit all of those standards, and we're really taking a look at the curriculum and finding ways in which we can present things to students in a more consolidated way, and yet still get across all of the standards that we need to meet.
And a follow-up, if Mrs. Walton could speak to her curriculum here, or curriculum at the high school, or as testing. People are asking, how would a test maybe be handled in classes?
So this is something that teachers are having robust conversations about. How do we have test security? How do we ensure that students are completing their own work? It is causing us as teachers to be a little bit creative in what we choose to assess and how we choose to assess. We don't know exactly what everything is going to look like, but I can assure you that we're spending a tremendous amount of time, because we want to make sure the students are meeting their learning objectives as well. And so these are conversations that are happening. In fact, today already, the science teachers were discussing how we're going to have these assessments and what they would look like. So there are online systems that can be used. We're exploring those. And then maybe just alternate assessments that could be projects and ways that students can show us their understanding in other ways rather than just pen and paper tests.
Next, thank you, that's good. Next question is about social distancing. It could go to anyone here. How will it be monitored in the mornings and in the afternoon? Ms. Burke?
At the middle school level, markings are in the hall. So as visual reminders for students to stay separate, we've also prepared little vignettes for various procedures and protocols that we want students to follow throughout the day. So the first couple of days of school are actually going to be spent teaching students how to follow those protocols, modeling those protocols, and actually practicing them in the hallways. We're at the middle school level committed to investing a significant amount of time at the beginning of the year, so students all know the expectations and are able to move forward.
Do either of you want to elaborate on that about how it's going to be monitored? Dr. Tracy or Mrs. Mann?
Sure. We also have in the building a number of bench substitute teachers. Those are kind of on-staff substitute teachers that when we're not going to use them in the classroom to teach a class, we'll have them available to help us to kind of monitor the halls and monitor students, making sure that they're practicing social distancing. Along with that, we also have 2 security guards that are here, typically full-time during the day. We also have an evening security guard that since there's going to be no afternoon activities, at least at the middle school for a while, we're going to move him to the day. So we'll have that additional security officer with us here during the day to help us to give students the reminders that they need when they're in the hallways. You know, I've already seen teachers reminding each other about being socially distant today. So I think that we'll have more than enough people around to kind of keep reminding the students. There's also been signage placed around the building that are reminders for students. Here in Bethany, we use our Be Amity motto. It's kind of our way that we teach our students to kind of be accountable, be their best self. It's an acronym that stands for you know, ways to kind of conduct yourself. And we have posters that were created by the PTSO generously that are going to help to remind students about what all of the expectations are under Be Amity in different areas around the school. So in the bathroom, there's a set of Be Amity, you know, be responsible, wash your hands, clean up after yourself, leave it cleaner than you came in. In the halls, there's a set of Be Amity rules that you should be following and trying to be the best that you can be here in the building, and then in the classroom. So we have, you know, visual reminders, we'll have physical reminders, and we'll have people there to remind them.
Thank you.
Can I just make, I'm sorry, I just want to make one comment. I think as a parent of students that are not in the Amity district, we can see by this panel put together tonight that an incredible amount of thought and talent has gone into the Amity plan. And I just want to point out that your Amity school district is going to be a safe place for your child. And there are multiple levels of safeguards put in place to protect your children. What I really worry about and what we've learned from the university openings across the country is what happens outside the schools. And that's going to be the major problem. We have a bunch of teenagers in high school with prefrontal cortexes that are not quite developed yet and are doing some high risk behavior. That is the concern. So as much thought and energy as has gone into putting a safe environment, you know, into place for your child to go back to school, we need to work double time at keeping our kids protected when they're home on weekends so that our faculty at Amity are protected and we keep our kids in school. So I just wanted to lend one little pep talk. And, you know, at these university closings, it's not the calculus class that's the problem, it's the dorm parties and it's the reckless behavior and lack of masking. So we really, if we want our kids in school, we really as parents need to clamp down and really continue to provide the guidance and safeguards that we need to. Thanks.
Thank you so much for saying that. We have about 4 or 5 minutes left, and what I'm seeing is other people maybe have logged on later that we probably should go back and review the first week one last time, what that first week looks like, and drop off and pick up procedures. If someone wants to address that first week.
So on August 31st, one half of our students will be here, the students that are whose last names are A to K, and those students will participate in direct in-person instruction. Anybody who is L to Z or who is voluntary remote learning, there's nothing happening for you that day. There may be some videos that we may encourage you to watch about how to access Google Classroom or Power School, but there is no direct instruction that day, just A to K in person. On September 1st, L to Z in person. That's who is participating, and it's in-person learning, and anybody who's in the A to K group or who's voluntary remote, nothing's happening that day. This is, again, to focus, like Mrs. Burke said, on really teaching students what our expectations are for when they are physically here in the school. On Wednesday, September 2nd, that day will be full remote learning for everybody from A to Z. And if they are voluntary, remote, everybody's participating. Just remember that day starts at 9:45 a.m. for the students. And then on Thursday and Friday, we will have our first opportunity for the students who are in person to get their direct instruction, and for students who are learning remotely to have some sort of asynchronous learning expectations. So there will be some assignments that might be in the Google Classroom. There might be some things that we're expecting the students to do. And then we hit Labor Day weekend, and on Tuesday, September 8th will be our first day of full in-person with half of the students, synchronous learning occurring for the students who are at home.
Okay, and the drop off and pickup procedures, Mrs. Mann, if you could address that.
Sure. So we sent out drop off and pickup procedures both in the plan, and then also alluded that we would send out information, which we did last week. And we still are looking at the data based on survey data of parents filling out that survey. So thank you very much for completing that survey, so that we can get a better understanding of how many students will be riding the bus versus how many students will be driven by a parent or a guardian, one way or the other, or both. And so at the high school, we will continue to follow our one-way entrance for morning drop-off. That's the best way to assure safety, just in terms of traffic safety. And so parents will enter the back at the North Pease entrance and follow one way, as will students who are driving. And so please be patient as our students are working to park their cars. They are new drivers, and it takes them just a little bit longer to make sure that they're being safe, and we encourage them to take that time. And so as you make your way down to drop your student off, what you'll notice is that you're being kind of you're waved up to the stop sign next to the central offices, instead of dropping off right at the door, the side door. No students will be coming in the side door. Actually, no people entering the building will be coming in any of the side doors. We're asking all students come in the front two doors or in the back. If students are parking in the back, they can come in the back, because we are going to be checking temperatures using a thermoscan for all people entering the building. And so our scanners will be placed at those two locations. And one of our security personnel will be monitoring a laptop that is going to be watching those thermoscans. And if a student who, for some reason at the start of school has a raised temperature, then that student will be brought aside, and there'll be a nurse's station right there to address that student. And everybody is asked to still continue to be vigilant about monitoring your own health and any symptoms that you might have, including faculty, but we are going to be doing this as an extra precaution. And then when they come into the building, there is no congregating allowed in the hallways. And that's going to be a big shift for our kids. That's a major time that they kind of look forward to in the morning, to see their friends and to kind of catch up. And that is not going to be allowed in terms of congregating in the hallway in the morning. And so that, to Ms. Burke's point, those are the kinds of behaviors that we're going to have to help our students adjust to. They will be asked to go directly to their first session class. So whether it's first period or third period. And so that's how drop off will work. As far as the buses, they will also be brought in. Our thermal scanners can scan a fairly large number of people at within a minute. And so we're pretty confident that we'll be able to get students in a timely fashion. But the drop off in terms of the side, you don't have to do a single drop off. We're going to ask that you pull up, and then about 4 or 5 car lengths of students will be getting out and walking in a socially distant manner to the front of the building. And then in the afternoon, as we've said, we will be dismissing students by bus to begin with. And so they will all leave in an orderly fashion in terms of by bus and groups of bus numbers, about 3 or 4 buses at a time. And once all the buses go and the students who are drivers are dismissed, then we will call students down by room number or areas of the building for getting picked up by parents. And the parents will not be allowed on campus until about 10 minutes after the end of the school day. So if it's an early dismissal and 12:12 is the end of the school day, we'll ask parents to wait till 20 after 12 to come onto campus and come in on the Newton Road entrance. So the same way the buses come in, come to the front of the building and come and queue up there so your child can come and get into the car right there, and then you can exit the same way that the buses do. So essentially, we're just going to kind of repeat the way that the buses exit the building. And that's one of the reasons, particularly because at the end of the school day, our North Pease entrance becomes an exit, and our students are driving out that way. And so again, we want to make sure we're maintaining the safety measures for everyone. And so that's kind of how that works. And I just want to make one more point about the high school schedule. In terms of that first week, it's really important that our kids get a chance to meet their teachers as much and as quickly as possible. We are looking at that whole week as kind of a getting to know you back to class. So there have been some questions about not seeing your students in person or not seeing your teachers in person, all of them in one shot on that Monday or that Tuesday. And we recognize that. We don't want to have multiple transitions in one school day, especially when it's a shortened day. And so we will be following our letter day schedules. So students in A through K will not see their period 7-8 class until that Thursday in terms of in person. And students L through Z will not be seeing their period 5-6 class until Friday. But we understand that is, that is one of the aspects of this schedule. But we're working hard to make the synchronous offsite learning a chance for kids to get to know their teachers as well. So as Audrey mentioned earlier, we are all working hard to learn from this experience, and we're going to learn together.
All right, and it's about 7:33, and that concludes our webinar for this evening. I want to thank all of our panelists for giving up their time this evening to be part of this. Our hope was that this has been helpful and provided you with some answers to questions that you might have had. As always, you can refer to the reopening plan, and all of the questions we hope to compile into a frequently asked questions document that will be shared. So on behalf of the Amity School District, I'd like to thank you and have a good night.